Well, thank you very much for coming. I think we've got nearly a full house, and particularly thank you for the alternate members of the Audit Committee for coming as well. Do we have any apologies for absence?
I've received no apologies, Chair. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
No apologies. I've not received any apologies, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes. Are people content with the minutes? No, thank you very much. I did comment, drawing to members' attention. I was very pleased that some of the points that we had in the last minutes, the audit plan capital, are going to be appearing on our agenda. So in terms of items requiring urgent attention, there are none. Division of the agenda. I don't believe there are any part 2 items, but I'll just take this opportunity to say this meeting is in 2 parts, and I will endeavour to finish around 11:45, and the second half of the meeting starts at 1 o'clock with a pensions presentation. But if there are any items left over, we'll do those after the pensions presentation. Okay, declarations of interest. Do any members want to declare an interest as it's set out in the agenda? Thank you very much. We come now to the annual accounts. Where are we? Who's doing that? Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm pleased to present this report, which sets out the draft statement of accounts, draft summary accounts, and the draft annual governance statement for the financial year ended the 31st of March 2025. This year's accounts reflect a robust financial performance in what continues to be a challenging economic environment. I'm pleased to report that through effective financial management, the Council has delivered a budget surplus of £502,000. Of this, £400,000 has been allocated to support delivery of our council plan, with the remaining £102,000 contributing to unearmarked reserves. The accounts have been prepared in accordance with all relevant accounting standards, including the implementation of IFRS 16 leases this year. A reclassification of the CCLA property fund has also been undertaken, which, although changing the accounting treatment, has no impact on the general fund due to the statutory override in place until 2029. The annual governance statement provides assurance around the Council's internal controls, risk management and governance arrangements, and reflects a commitment to continuous improvement. I would also draw members' attention to the Council's excellent performance in terms of revenue generation and collection. The Council tax collection rate of 98.69% places the Council in the top 5% nationally. The business rates collection fund has moved from a deficit to a surplus. This is due to the release of Section 31 grant into the collection fund to finance the additional business rate relief granted by central government. It is anticipated that the business rate collection rate of 97.81% will place the Council in the second quartile nationally. Capital investment continues to play a vital role in delivering our strategic priorities. In 2024-25, we made significant capital investments, including over £3.4 million in the Oakhampton Interchange project. This new railway station in Oakhampton is mainly being funded by government grant from the Department for Transport. This is a key infrastructure development for the borough. We have also invested in energy efficiency, housing improvements and community grants, ensuring we deliver value for our residents both now and in the future. In summary, these draft accounts demonstrate the Council's ongoing commitment to sound financial management, prudent use of resources and delivering outcomes that make a difference to our communities. I'd like to place on record my thanks to the finance team for the diligence and professionalism in preparing these documents. The external audit by Bishop Fleming is now underway, and we look forward to bringing the final audited accounts back to this committee in the autumn. Members are invited to note the draft statement of accounts, the summary accounts and annual governance statement, and we're happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. An excellent report. Do members have any questions, comments? Councillor Cheadle.
Thank you very much. I've got 3 questions. In para 3.4, it mentions that we had additional expenditure of around about 7% of our budget. As I've said at previous audit committees, through the magic of Mrs. Buckle's abacus, we've managed to net off that with unforeseen windfalls from here and there. But I just wondered whether that 7.1% reduction in our budget, if that's the right way of putting it, is a trend we're likely to see continue. I mean, is that the sort of figure that we should be aiming in the future to offset our revenue by? That's the first question.
It'd be better to take one question at a time.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. I think in terms of the variations from budgeted expenditure in 24-25, these mainly fall, I would say, into 3 areas. The first is around temporary accommodation and homelessness costs, whereby our budget was 176,000 over the budget of 298,000. In next year's budget, we have addressed that. So in 25-26, we've put an extra 160,000 into temporary accommodation and homelessness. And also the council is doing things to address those temporary accommodation costs. So things like buying local authority, using government grant to buy properties. There was a report to the Hub Committee very recently to buy 2 additional properties for resettlement and temporary accommodation. So we are hoping with those additional units that we've been able to buy that we will bring down those temporary accommodation costs. The other area, I think, is around economic conditions around the waste contract. So that's around inflation and increased contract costs. Again, we have built more budget into 25-26 for waste. And we were affected by things like haulage costs for Recyclate. So again, we've addressed that in next year's budget. And we did see a shortfall in the sale of Recyclate. So those 2 areas and things that have affected us in the past have been things like ICT contract costs, whereby we are seeing our contract costs going up by a lot more than inflation, and that tends to be a trend across all ICT contract costs. So other district councils are seeing the same trend. And again, audit fees have gone up. Again, those have been nationally agreed by public sector auditing accounting bodies. So again, we have increased the audit fee budget for next year. I mean, in terms of where should we aim, I would always like to try to get between 3 and 5% in terms of expenditure and income. I think in terms of treasury management income, as we've seen, base rates have not come down as quickly as perhaps we first envisaged, certainly when we were setting the budget. So I think in terms of treasury management income, we've got more money to invest, and that is because mainly through government grant schemes whereby we've managed to secure that funding in advance of expenditure. So we've had more funds, more cash flow for the council to invest for longer, particularly around some of the big government schemes, particularly around the Oakhampton interchange scheme that we are the accountable body for. That has meant we can invest longer term. So that's certainly helped us with regards to our treasury management income. But in terms of addressing those in the budget, that's one thing we always do. We will be looking to bring a medium-term financial strategy back to members in September, October time. And again, we will look forward, try to predict things like interest rate forecasts. But we can see that those aren't coming down quite as quick as we are expecting, although it is thought that there will be another base rate cut at the next meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. It sounds as if these are sort of trends rather than blips, if I can put it that way.
Yes, I would agree.
And you've accounted for those in future budgeting. That's really the point I wanted to make. My second question was about the Oakhampton interchange. And I'd just like to ask or understand what risk we as West Devon bear as being a part of that project.
I think we are the accountable body, but there is a tripartite agreement between ourselves, Devon County Council, who are the Transport Authority, and the Department for Transport. In that tripartite agreement, it's very clear that the risk of any project overspends all fall to Devon County Council. So West Devon Borough Council is not exposed to any risk of cost overrun on that project.
Yeah, I mean, that was exactly the answer I wanted to hear,
and,
but I just
there
wanted
is
to be
a very
sure.
clear tripartite agreement that's been signed by all three parties.
So we're absolved of any financial risk associated with that project. My final question was on Para 316, and that's to do with earmark reserves, which I note earmark reserves increased by 0.8 of a million. Given that earmark reserves are earmarked for particular things, what are the things that have increased by 0.8 of a million?
Chairman, the main thing that's increased is that 400,000 of the surplus from the 24-25 accounts has been put into an earmark reserve for the council plan. So in that respect, the council plan reserves have gone up by 400,000. Now, those are earmarked for projects over the next 2 years. So, for example, there is a community halls capital grants project and a community arts and activities grants project, and 280,000 has been allocated over the next 2 years for those two projects. So obviously the expenditure hasn't happened yet, but that 400,000 has increased our earmarked reserves. Also, in terms of some of the increases there, you can see things like we do have government grants for things like the Ukraine and Afghan humanitarian crisis. So you can see our reserve in terms of that went up by 125,000. So again, this is where we are receiving grants money in advance of expenditure. So that has gone into a reserve because it can't be used for anything else. It's ring-fenced for that revenue purpose. But yes, that has gone into our reserves as well, increasing them. And the other thing that increases our reserves is we put money aside for vehicle replacement. So we have put 300,000 aside for vehicle replacement. Some of the vehicles are on order, so again they will be spent in this financial year 25-26, but we put money into that reserve every financial year. So you will see the reserves building up, but then a big chunk of expenditure will come out all at one time. So in 25-26 there will be quite a bit of expenditure from earmark reserves. When I put together the medium-term financial strategy, I will do a schedule for members that shows every reserve and what I predict those balances to be over the next 2 to 3 years, so that we can see the trend of whether those reserves are predicted to go up or go down over the next 2 to 3 financial years, and what they're earmarked for.
I got that. Yeah, thanks
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any Councillor Oxborough?
Chairman, It's another question about the reserves and the surplus, and to do with a subject which will need to be discussed outside of this committee in other forums, but I'd like to raise it here because it's come to my attention over the last few months. It's one of those, if you excuse the pun, it's a down in the weeds issue to do with grounds maintenance. The Parochial Church Council in Merrytavy is dissatisfied with the level of work that's undertaken by the grounds maintenance team in maintaining the closed churchyard. The budget allocation at the moment is relatively low, and it doesn't permit the grounds team to undertake the work to the level expected by the Parochial Church Council. Now, I can only speak for one of the 7. There are 7 closed churchyards in West Devon. I don't know how the others are faring, but the feeling is that more should be spent. And when I see that there's a budget surplus coming through pretty much on an annual basis, I'm wondering if there's a justification for increasing the budget in future years in that area in order that the work can be undertaken to a higher level and satisfy the demands and expectations of these smaller bodies. So I raise it here, but it requires discussion outside of this forum. But it's a question, I think, which is pertinent given that it's a statutory service, but it's one that we're doing the bare minimum to at the moment.
Thank you. I think you're quite right. It's some discussion for another place, but I think it's a general issue that I think you've alluded, Section 151 officer alluded to, which is the allocation of reserves and future spend and how these are appraised. I did notice as well on a similar thing on earmark reserves. There was, I think, the Section 151 officer alluded to the way earmark reserves are built up. There's a lot of them have no movement, neither in nor out. So I just wondered if you'd like to say a few words about why we're seeing earmark reserves with no movements.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just with respect to Councillor Oxburgh's previous point, I mean, obviously that's a member decision. If members wish to spend more in certain areas, obviously that can come through the budget setting process or through the council plan process. In terms of timing. With regards to earmark reserves, there are some reserves which their balances haven't changed. So, for example, the Innovation Invest to Earn Reserve, that has got just over 300,000 in it. There was a report to the Hub Committee on the 10th of June, and members have agreed to earmark 100,000 of that reserves for Wonacots, for planning work. So again, there is a commitment against that reserve, but expenditure will happen in this financial year. And with regards to other commitments to that Innovation Invest to Earn Reserve, some of that reserve has been earmarked for upgrading of the waste depot. So again, it has been, it's allocated to a capital project. It's in the capital programme, but again, the expenditure hasn't happened yet. So that's why you haven't seen the balance move down, but it is committed for a capital project with regards to waste. The Financial Stability Reserve, again, that hasn't changed in terms of its balance there, but again, that is earmarked for the council plan. So as council plan projects are spent, funding will come out of the earmark reserves that have been allocated for the council plan. So within the list, within the medium-term financial strategy that members will receive around September, October time, there will be a list showing all of the commitments against each of those reserves, and also a projection about when expenditure will be spent, and also what the level of those reserves will be over the next 2 to 3 financial years, so that we can see the projection of the level of earmark reserves. And I think the projection will be that those will start to decrease over the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Councillor Cheadle.
If I may have first. One more. I spotted, this is a tiddler by the way, but I spotted in the paperwork reference to a thing called the Swimming Pool Support Fund. How much is that, and is it something that is a one-off payment, or is it sort of something that we can get from time to time?
Where would that be in the report, Councillor? Which page is that, Councillor? I think it's...
Yes, so the Swimming Pool Support Fund was a government grant scheme. So it was government funding that we applied for some funding for. I think it was the Oakhampton Leisure Centre that received that funding for some works there. But yes, it was a one-off government grant scheme that we could apply to, but there isn't any future funding. It was a one-off opportunity around that. Mr. Parkinson, our leisure officer, applied for some funds and we were successful in that. So yes, you do see that in the
Yeah, I saw reference to it,
programme.
but I couldn't see the figure anyway,
Yes.
so I just wondered how much it was.
Thank you very much. We've got Councillor Johnson and then Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I refer to page 15, 4.4, Council Tax Collection Fund balance? At the year end, there was a 2.38 million surplus balance on this account. Can I ask Mrs. Buckle to explain how this happens and if there's any impact on West Devon Borough Council as a result of this?
Yes, thank you very much. So with regards to the council tax position, I think that's shown on page 130 of the agenda or page 114 of the accounts. So when we set the budget on an annual basis, we make an estimate of how much the council will collect in council tax. We set a target of 97.75%. Our actual performance for last year was 98.69%. And I'm very pleased to report to members that the council was actually 13th nationally out of 296 councils who are billing authorities. In terms of council tax collection rates, that actually placed the council not only in the top quartile, but within the top 5% of all councils nationally with regards to council tax. So the reason the balance on the collection fund has increased is because the council has outperformed its target in terms of collection rates by nearly 1%. Obviously, when we are collecting over 50 million annually through the collection fund, that has quite an impact. Every year, the council is required by the 31st of January to calculate the amount of surplus from the collection fund that it will distribute not only to itself but to the major precepting authorities. So that balance on the collection fund will be distributed to Devon County Council will receive the majority share, over 70% of that. The fire authority, the police authority, ourselves as the billing authority, towns and parishes do not receive part of that surplus. That's because that is set out in statutory legislation. Local precepting authorities do not receive a share of that. But similarly, if we were to under-collect against our target, they don't receive less either. So towns and parishes receive exactly the amount of precept that they have set. So the fact that the fund is in surplus is always a good thing, and we will be distributing that over a period of the next 2 financial years. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, 3.6 on page 10 about bad debts. First of all, my first question is, how are the debts pursued? Is this done in-house or through an agency?
It is mainly done in-house. We do have a contract with a bailiffs as well. So it is sort of multifaceted in that respect. We do use things like Experian as trace where people are. And if we do write off any bad debts, they do stay on our system for at least 6 financial years. So if those if people move back into the borough, we can see if a debt has been written off in previous financial years, and it will be written back on again at that point. Yes, so in terms of the bad debt provision, part of that was providing for a debt around the council's leisure service. There will be a report coming to members around October, November time with regards to the leisure provision. But but there will be sundry debt in there as well. So that is things like, for example, if the council has paid a deposit for housing tenants, then trying to recover that deposit at the end of the tenancy. We also have debts for things like car parking fines, environmental health. So we have sundry debt, as well as the larger debts around council tax and business rates and housing benefit.
Thank you for that. A subsidiary question. Do we have a policy on the percentage that we will spend in trying to recover the debt? So do you give up after a certain level of effort, shall I say, for want of a better term?
We do, in terms of the write-offs all come to myself as a section one for one of the, to agree any write-offs. We do have a category that we would say is uneconomical to pursue. I would probably say that's around £50, £50 to £70. Whereby if we've got a debt, a very small amount of debt, we will look to write that off because it's just not economical for us to try to pursue that.
Thank you. Councillor Sellers.
Thank you. There are many areas of deprivation in West Devon, and certainly when you knock on people's doors, a lot of people worry and struggle with paying council tax. Is there any dialogue about possibly reducing council tax? Or I know that we have always charged what we can because we don't want to reduce the base budget. However, I'm wondering, with surplus, are we able to reduce council tax, and whether that's an arena that we look at here?
Would you like to make a first answer? And that was...
Thank you, Chairman. So with regards to council tax, we do have something called the council tax reduction scheme, whereby if residents are within a certain limit in terms of their weekly earnings, they can receive a reduction on their council tax. I would say that our council tax reduction scheme is more generous than other districts within Devon. So in terms of that's a policy decision by members, that members have decided they wanted to make the council tax reduction scheme in that way. So there are certain bandings, and if your weekly earnings fall within those bandings, you can automatically apply to the council to have your council tax reduced through the council tax reduction scheme, but you do have to meet the criteria for that scheme, and details of that are on the council's website. With regards to payments, at the moment the default position is that residents pay over 10 instalments. If residents are struggling with that, they can phone the council and ask for their instalments to be over 12 monthly periods. Obviously that does affect the council's cash flow, because we still have to pay the preceptors in that respect. Also, we do benefits checks for residents as well. So if they contact us, we can do a benefits check to make sure they are getting all the benefits that they are eligible for, and help them with that. And then obviously we do have things like citizens' advice as well that help with help residents with if they've got debt and how to prioritise those debts. So hopefully, Chairman, that answers the question, but I think there are a range of support measures we do put in place.
I thought that was very helpful, but to answer the councillor's first question about whether it's for this committee, it's not for this committee.
No, it isn't, and I realise that, but I think it's good to air it.
That's great. Thank you very much. Do we have any further questions, other points of questions? Well, I have one.
Just one, please, Chair. Yes, I hadn't quite spotted the fact that on 3.6 it says increase. What is our total bad debt? The accumulated debt over the period, please? Because you write off after 5 years, I think you said?
Yes, we do. So there are different debt levels for different categories. So with regards to, say, council tax and business rates, council tax debt is shown in the accounts. and business rates also is shown separately. I will get the figures, most up-to-date figures for you.
Thank you very much.
To those.
Thank you very much. Could I ask a question? And it's on page 38 of our papers. It's a question for clarification, and it relates to comprehensive income and expenditure statement, place and enterprise. And the net expenditure has gone up from 3.1 million last year to 6.9. And it's explained in the note underneath about additional capital charges. I just wonder if you could enlarge on what you mean by capital charges and what it relates to.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So capital charges is mainly, you can think of it in terms of, it's akin to depreciation really, and something called REFCUS expenditure. So that stands for Revenue Expenditure Financed Through Capital under statute. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it is a technical term. So that is revenue which is defined by statute, by capital. So, for example, the main reason that that particular figure has gone up, the 3.5 predominantly relates to the transport hub for West Devon, for which we are the accountable body for the Oakhampton Railway. So the funding has been provided by the Department for Transport. The project is being delivered in partnership with Devon County Council and Network Rail. The transport hub will not sit on the council's balance sheet once it has been completed. Therefore, whilst this expenditure is capital in nature and has gone through our accounts, it is treated as REFCUS, revenue expenditure funded by capital, as part of the accounts. So other things that would be REFCUS are things like disabled facilities grants, HUG grants, so home upgrades. Again, this is capital expenditure which has gone through the council's accounts, but we don't own an asset at the end of it. So there isn't an asset that is sat on our balance sheet. These are grants which have come through the council's finances, and that's why we have capital charges and depreciation with regards to that. So you can see that's why it's gone through the category of place and enterprise, because it was to do with the Oakhampton interchange. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, very helpful. Councillor Oxborough.
Sorry, Chairman, it was something that caught my eye as I was just doing a final scan through this particular set of papers. It's to do with the business rates. 4.1, there's a table, page 12, that looks at the allocation of business rates across the various preceptors, as it states. The question is really about what happens in the event of a business premise being empty, not being in use. What level of business rates are then collected on that building? What are the consequences of a building ceasing to exist pending rebuilding? What happens during the interregnum when there is a gap in the high street, as we have in Tavistock, for example? Are business rates continue to be collected on the basis of what the building was, or are they no longer applicable because there is no building there? And is this a mechanism that developers are cunningly using to avoid paying for a period? A number of questions there, but just one that caught my eye.
Thank you. With regards to empty premises, they are still liable for business rates. In terms of whether a property comes out of the rating list, that is a decision of the valuation office, so it's not a decision of the Borough Council. If, for example, a property has been demolished, they have to apply to the valuation office. They will go and do an inspection, and if they feel that the rateable value has to be taken out of the rating list, then they will notify the Borough Council, and quite often that will be backdated to a point in time. It's similar for council tax rated properties. So some properties, for example, residents feel should be taken out of the rating list, but that will always be a decision of the valuation office. So if the valuation office still feels that that dwelling is capable of being lived in, they will not take it out of the rating list and it will stay in the rating list. But again, that's a function of the valuation office rather than ourselves as the Borough Council.
Yeah, its full business rates are collected on a vacant property in the High Street, for example.
Yes.
Yeah. But it is our decision as to whether or not we allow someone to knock something down pending rebuilding. and we're not putting in conditions in place that moves that process along. It's an area for another part of the council, I acknowledge, but nevertheless we've got a reduction in income, and therefore a reduction in our share of that income from a premise which was a substantial one, the old Woolworths site I'm thinking about in Tavistock High Street. It's been that's been a sore in the high street for some years now. Nothing's happened there, and I don't think the developers have any intention of doing anything there because there's a surplus of vacant units in the high street. And the moment they start building and they finish one, they'll be paying business rates on it. I think we've missed the trick. I think we've had the bull pull generally. But as I say, it's an area for another part of council.
Yeah, thank you for you, Chairman. If there are particular properties that members would like us to look at, then obviously we can refer that to Mrs. Hodgkiss, our Head of Revenues and Benefits, that would take a more detailed look at that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? I've just got an observation on page 36. It's the principal risks and uncertainty. We appear to have two more risks on the table, on the side of the table, that are not in there. I just wondered if you could say where they are, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that's a copy and paste issue across into the document. Both of the risks that do not feature on the chart at the moment are a likelihood of 4 and an impact of 4, so an overall score of 16. So they both fall within that space. But we will get that updated in the final version of the SOA.
Thank you very much. I like to raise trivia from time to time, so that's okay. Further points, questions I have, but further points or questions. In terms of significant governance issues, I'm going to move now to the governance report statement. It's page 157. I find it myself, and it's a very good table that sets out. I'm just turning to page 157 myself. Yeah, it talks about significant governance issues, and it talks about in the table action to be taken, but it seems to be talking about action that has been taken rather than prospectively looking forward. And it's a question of whether it is meant to be action, a report of action actually taken, or the forward-looking plan, or both. So I'm not sure who put together the annual governance statements. As a question, what do you think?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, the title does say action to be taken. I think most of the actions set out on there are things that will continue to happen, so that it might have already started, it might already be well underway, but it's actions that will continue through the next year. We probably could clarify that in the next iteration of the annual governance statement. But I think certainly if you look at health and wellbeing, service provision, we've talked about a member working group, that will continue. So I think that there are ongoing actions, but we've just not been specific enough within the detail. So again, we can update that.
Yes, I think it's very, we have spoken about these issues before, obviously, at the committee, and obviously they relate to the key risks. We've been talking about medium-term financial strategy, etc., etc. And thank you for those comments. Any further...
Chairman, a point of order. The number you refer to, page number, is that the number on the agenda page or the actual document?
It's the page. It's the page that I'm looking at in modern.gov, and I don't think is there a page number at on the printed ones. It's.
Documents have page numbers on them, but also on the agenda at the top and the blue bar, it has a different number. I'm just trying to keep track of what's going on.
Somebody can help me with that, I'm sure. But if you look at it on your computer, it's the sidebar which says it's the page in the document as the printed numbers, the number of pages, rather than actually in the bottom, which is a source of confusion in the past. Sorry, those people with printed reports. Sorry, Karen.
Thank you, Chairman. There was a previous question around the bad debt provision for council tax and business rates and the bad debt provision. I've just looked up the answers to those. So with regards to bad debt, the bad debt provision for business rates is 644,000. That is a provision of 60% of the outstanding debt. The debt outstanding is 1.07 million. And again, I'm very pleased to report that business rate debt has come down. So if you look at previous years, our debt levels in 21-22, our business rate debt was 1.6 million. That was obviously off the back of COVID. It is now down to 1.07 million. So the trend of our debt levels are going down, and that's bearing in mind that since that point, we would have been billing business rates on an annual basis as well. With regards to council tax, I'm just going to open that one up. Council tax bad debt provision is 2.9 million. Our council tax debt level is 4.6 million, but that is going back over a number of financial years. So that is not all from one financial year, that is spread over the past 10 financial years, that debt level. And again, that is reduced from 2021, where our debt levels were higher, they were 4.8 million. So even the trajectory of both of those debt levels are moving down from where we were in 2020, 2021. And our collection rates, again, for business rates, we are expecting to be in the second quartile for business rate debt collection. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that full answer. Very, very good. Do we have any other questions and points on the accounts and governance statement? Could I propose then that we note the accounts, the summary accounts, and the governance statements? Are we happy to do that? Thank you very much. So it's agenda item 7, which is the end of year internal audit plan. Is Councillor Edmonds?
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to introduce this internal audit progress report for the 2024-25 financial year, which provides members with a comprehensive overview of the assurance work completed to date and outlines the emerging opinion for the year. Internal audit plays a vital role in supporting the Council's governance, risk management and internal control arrangements. It provides independent and objective assurance that our systems and processes are operating effectively and helps us to identify areas where improvements can and should be made. In doing so, it contributes directly to the Council's overall financial resilience, service delivery and accountability to the communities we serve. This report demonstrates good progress against the internal audit plan, with the majority of planned audits either completed or well underway. And I'm very pleased to see a significant number of audits receiving reasonable or substantial assurance ratings, which reflects positively on the Council's internal control environment. Where weaknesses have been identified, I'm confident that appropriate action is being taken by management to address these in a timely and robust manner. As we continue through the financial year, I would like to express my thanks to the internal audit team for their professional and diligent work, and to all services involved in supporting the audit process. Effective audit oversight remains central to our commitment to good governance, and I welcome the committee's continued scrutiny of these important matters. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members have comments, questions? Councillor Oxborough.
Thank you, Chairman. With regards to the table on page 168 of the whole document and 164 of the printed document, over time, has the balance of reasonable and substantial assurance changed for the positive, or is it pretty much static at where it sits at the moment, or has anything gone backwards? It's that trend over time, as we've commented in the past, which is really the important one to watch. Are we improving in general, or are we static in general, or are we getting worse in general? That's the question.
Thank you. Would you answer, Councillor Edmonds, or pass it somewhere? Or pass it to the internal auditor?
Well, my view is that we are improving, and if we look at the number of substantial ratings, those have steadily increased. And if we look at this report, I think I'm right in saying there are no high priority recommendations contained in it, whereas perhaps in previous reports I recall that there have been some. So my feeling is that certainly there is an improving trend. But I'll defer to Joe, who is the internal auditor.
Through you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you. It's a good summary given. I would say I would agree with the conclusions drawn. You're looking at page 172, you can see the high-level summary audit plan results there, where all audits are in the reasonable or substantial assurance, and that is very consistent for West Devon Borough Council. So it is a very good position to be in, and something that consistently over the years that I've been involved with the work here is mainly in that reasonable, substantial arena that we're seeing the outcome of the work. In terms of the detail on those reviews, we do give those at each committee. So the information you're seeing in Appendix A in this report is any final reports that have been finalised since we last came to committee back in March. So it's not the full picture, because you would have had those in progress updates as we move through the year. What's really important there is, obviously, in any sort of reasonable assurance reports that we're providing, there may still be the odd high issue recommendation, but not enough to bring it down to that limited overall review. So that's where the focus needs to be for the council, as anything that's looking sort of high in those reports. But that is few and far between for West Devon.
Thank you. Any comments, questions?
Just to say that in keeping with the principle of continuous improvement, that sounds very positive, and it's the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further comments, questions? I'm going to ask the question, which I guess the answer to, about the feasibility of, or the ambition of the overall grading of reasonable assurance to substantial assurance. I just wondered if you could say a few words about how feasible that is, or whether and where we are in relation to other councils.
Through you, Chair. It's a very good question, and it's one that we do get asked a lot across our clients across Devon. I would say to achieve a reasonable level of assurance across all the work you're doing is really positive and a very good aim for any authority. I would say in our current climate, in terms of resource, budget, to achieve that substantial level of assurance across all the work we're doing across the year is very difficult to achieve. So I think working towards that reasonable assurance is positive. Obviously, the aim there is to try and bring any more of those reasonable assurance reviews up to that substantial level as we're working through the year. But I would say over my time with the partnership, we have not given substantial assurance to any one of our clients across Devon, because there's a lot of work we're doing across the year, and I think clients are working based on risk. So therefore, we do have some issues coming out in our reviews where medium and low risks, and our clients do have to prioritise the work they're doing in line with those risks. So obviously, if we're identifying anything high, that is a priority compared to anything low, and it may be that those low risks are accepted in order to sort of balance in terms of resources available. So whilst it's always really good to aim for that highest level of assurance, I would say it is difficult to achieve across the board, and very much need to remember that the work we're doing across the year in terms of the audit plan is a risk-based audit plan. Therefore, we are naturally looking at areas that have that attract a higher risk anyway. So the likelihood of issues coming out of those is going to be higher than obviously any areas where we wouldn't be looking at with low risk. Hopefully that helps give a conclusion on that question.
Thank you very much. Do anybody further comments, questions? Well, thank you very much. We're asked to approve that, I believe. Did I see Councillor Cheadle say? Are we happy to approve that? Thank you very much. You got the. Where are we now? Audit and governance self-assessment, and I think that might be me. Gosh. I'm going to introduce this very briefly. As soon as I can scroll down. Yeah, okay. Right, so I was very, very pleased that we carried out a self-assessment. And this is really good practice for an audit committee to do. I think there are just a small number of members were doing it, but the purpose of doing the self-assessment is self-improvement, is continuous improvement, so that we can identify those areas that we need from the workshop for this committee to do its job better, which was providing assurance to the council. So I wonder if I could ask Joe to speak a little bit about how this was done and and talk to the report a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm more than happy to. So the idea of the self-assessment for audit committees came from recommendation from CIPFA that audit committees should self-assess themselves in terms of some criteria that CIPFA had put together. So whilst this is the committee's self-assessment, what we've done across all our clients is just help them through that process. So we facilitated a workshop where we sat with Audit and Governance Committee members, and we helped take them through the different points within the CIPFA self-assessment documentation. But very much the responses and the conclusions that are drawn in this report are from yourselves, from the Audit and Governance Committee. We've just literally penned that down for you and popped it in a document to help you have an action plan, to collect your conclusions together in a document, but also put together an action plan for any areas that were identified for further improvement. So in terms of the style of the report, we've just used a similar style of report that we would use for audits, where it's assessed in terms of reasonable and limited that you'll see on the second page, then that is just where some areas have been identified for improvement, and we pop them into a table document to help you to have a document to work with going forward. But this is really your document, your conclusions drawn from the CIPFA self-assessment, benchmarked against the issues identified in the CIPFA document.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome comments from the committee, particularly those people who did not attend the workshop. Councillor Oxborough.
Yes, I was one of the members that did attend this workshop. I must say that when I was told that it was happening, and I'm invited to get involved, you volunteer for these things, and there was a certain amount of misgivings about this, because I thought, is this going to be one of these turgid exercises that I'm going to live to regret ever volunteering for? Well, it turned out to be anything but that. It was actually quite a worthwhile experience. I certainly found it thought-provoking and challenging, and actually really quite enjoyed the way that it was done. So thank you to the team that put it together. It was really, really well done indeed. And some good stuff has come out of it. So yes, it was an excellent couple of hours spent with the audit team. Thank you.
Councillor Cheadle.
Regrettably, I was one of the 4 members of the committee that happened to be abroad during the exercise. But my question really relates to the fact that, given that only 3 of the audit committee were able to attend the session, and therefore 4 didn't, is there any benefit in the 4 of us who didn't attend catching up or doing something, because if it was that valuable, we've missed out in that sense.
I think it's an extremely valuable comment. I'm just wondering if we can arrange something for a review meeting of this as part of the development plan. Is that okay? I think if we schedule that in, that'd be very valuable. Thank you. Any further comments on the development plan, on the self-assessment? So I can guess that we've approved that and we'll work on the recommendations. If we move to the next part, which is the, the counter fraud report. Could I just ask the internal auditor to pass a few comments on the annual counter fraud report?
Thank you, Chair. So, this item is an annual counter-fraud assessment that we undertake with the Council. the main part of the report really is the checklist that you'll see that starts on page 206. So those questions are sort of sit for expected questions that they would want to ask of local authorities, and we have gone through those with the council, and their responses are there showing within that checklist. From our work with the council, with our counter-fraud team and the work they do with the council, then obviously we do discuss these responses and the findings in terms of those questions, and actually look at the reasonableness of that in line with our view on West Devon Council in terms of that. So we were very happy with the responses in there. It hasn't identified anything that's an issue or anything they need to be concerned about, so we've given the conclusion that there are robust controls in place for counter fraud. As part of our offering, if there are any fraud issues arising throughout the year, then the authority can contact Devon Audit Partnership, link in with our fraud team for any investigations that are needed throughout the year. Always remember that we can do fraud awareness training as well. So if there's any fraud awareness training that the council would like for either for members or across council staff, then that is something that we do offer as well. And fraud awareness is really good in order to sort of bring that to people's forefront of their minds, and also be minded in any assurance reviews that we're doing across the year. We do keep in mind any potential fraud risks in terms of any audits that we're carrying out. So it is something that we are looking at as part of our audit work continuously, but again, we've got that designated counter-fraud team should you wish or need to use us.
Thank you. And any comments, questions? Councillor Oxborough.
I'm guessing I really ought to know the answer to this question, but I can't think what it is, so I shall ask it anyway. In terms of the actual level of fraud that West Devon has been exposed to, I know it's not specifically about this report, but I'm struggling to think where that's reported and what the trend is again. I wonder if somebody could just help me out.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we have very low levels of fraud. So at the moment, it's not reported specifically to any committee. We would look to do that and perhaps report it back here to the Audit and Governance Committee. We do take part in government initiatives, so there is something called the National Fraud Initiative, which is basically a data matching exercise. So we would upload all of the data that we have available. So that would be things like data around the electoral registration roll, data around council tax single persons discounts, and that would be matched nationally against other data. And if there are any irregularities or discrepancies, that is then further investigated nationally. So we do take part in that. All councils take part in the National Fraud Initiative. We don't get a sort of specific report back with regards to that we could share with members. It's just a national exercise that we take part in. But yes, mainly fraud cases that we've referred to Devon Audit Partnership, that was mainly during COVID and during the pandemic, and it was around business grants. That was reported to members. So when Devon Assurance Partnership brought their report back to members, we did say there, I think there were under 10 cases referred to DAP, and that was reported to members with regards to those. Yeah, but we haven't had any fraud case that we've referred to Devon Assurance Partnership in this financial year, or indeed the last financial year.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On page 209, that's the printed document page, item 16 about whistleblowing, says a whistleblowing policy is in place. Is there any data collected from the various participants in terms of whistleblowing activities and possible outcomes, and how are they dealt with?
Thank you. So yes, with regards to whistleblowing, that is generally any referrals would be made to the council's monitoring officer. We haven't, to my knowledge, had any instances of whistleblowing recently, but if we did, then that would be reported back to members. I think it would probably come through this committee, because this committee agreed the whistleblowing policy. We do, with regards to induction training for staff, and for members, that's where we would highlight the whistleblowing policy and the procedures that would be appropriate for a person to go through with regards to that.
Thank you. Can I just ask a supplementary item 17 on the same document? It says of a number of people who are, to whom it applies. Is there any training given to people? Certainly I, as a fairly new member, haven't seen any details on possible whistleblowing that I might encounter. So is there training available, etc.? And is it given across the range of all the people who are participating?
We certainly train all of our staff, so that's part of our induction process. So whenever we get any new staff joining, it's also, we have a staff newsletter called In the Know, so we would promote the whistleblowing policy through In the Know as well. Like I say, that does encourage anybody that feels that they would like to report anything through that route to contact the council's monitoring officer in the first place, which is David Fairbairn. I'm not sure about whistleblowing training for members. That is something that I'll speak to the Democratic Services Manager and we can look to schedule that in for members. We have done fraud training as well, so again that was for all of our heads of service rather than members, but we did specific fraud training, so the head of fraud that works for Plymouth City Council actually came and did training for all of our heads of service on that.
Thank you. There has been training for members, but I think it's a good point to review. Could I ask Councillor Sellis?
Thanks. Cyber training, is there any evidence that the members' statutory training has identified any potential frauds? Do we know? We can take that outside the meeting, but it would be quite interesting to get an update, because the IT department, I think it needs a pat on the back. The fact how diligent they are to remind members to do the training. And I only last week was subjected to potential fraud in my private life. And it was testament to the training that I've had that saved my bacon. And I was able to go and contact phishing in my bank and what have you. So I know that I'm much more aware, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm just wondering whether that anything has been identified and we've been saved through our training.
Could I just come in before you come in? I believe Councillor Edmonds is the responsible member for making sure that the rest of us do the training, and just wondered if you could say a few words about how effective that has been. Could you put the microphone?
Yeah, that certainly is part of my role. And as you know, the council is putting a lot of emphasis around, cyber security. So it is, very high on the list of priorities. As we know, we receive our test on a very regular basis. I think I've received one a couple of days ago. And I think with that added focus and perhaps a little encouragement from myself, from the occasional email or phone call, we have got better at completing the tests. And I do get reports, exception reports, if councillors haven't got around to doing their testing, so then I'm able to focus on those until we get them up to date. I'm happy to confirm I've not received that type of report recently, so certainly I think that message got through, cybersecurity, how important for all of us that we keep our training and testing up to date, which, okay, may not in itself, at the end of the day, totally guarantee us, but we certainly can demonstrate that our staff and members have received training. And I think now we're at a very good level of completion, perhaps compared to a year ago, 18 months ago. I think we've all seen the importance of completing this training in a reasonable time frame.
Well, thank you, that's very helpful. I sort of reiterate the issue of training and cybersecurity, and all the issues have been raised, and I think it's very valuable points. Councillor Hawkesbury.
Yeah, Chairman, just a quick one on that question. When we received the notification that there's a training exercise to undertake, I must admit there have been a couple of late where I've been a little bit late doing them, but I always get around doing them. And I have a policy of always doing one of the options. There's an optional one to watch as well, about this police hack that occurs. I'm just wondering if we've got any data on how many members actually take the trouble to do that one. And are they working through it? 'Cause it's a long one. I mean, you can't do it all in one go. You should be there for about 3 days because it's a multi-episode sort of training exercise. But how many members are actually undertaking that one as well, or just doing the minimum? I'll be interested
Perhaps
to know.
we could ask for a very short report later on in a subsequent meeting about the effectiveness of cyber security and the measures we're taking to improve it. That'd be
The reason I ask is it gives us a measure of how many members are doing it because they have to, and how many of them generally realise the value of doing it and do as much as they possibly can.
I think we should take this on board. Thank you very much. Any further comments, questions? Well, thank you very much. I think are we asked to note or approve, but I hope we do. These two reports. Thank you. Can we move on to the annual Treasury Management Report? Councillor Edmonds.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is the annual Treasury Management Report for 2024-25, which sets out the Council's performance in managing its Treasury operations during the financial year. Treasury management plays a vital role in the Council's financial strategy, encompassing the effective management of cash flow, investments, borrowing and financial risk. It directly supports the Council's ability to deliver services, maintain resilience and fund capital priorities. Despite a challenging economic backdrop characterised by high inflation, interest rate uncertainty and ongoing global financial volatility, the Council has remained compliant with all its approved prudential indicators and Treasury limits. Notably, investment income reached 1.552 million, exceeding the budgeted target by over 752,000. The Council achieved an average return on investments of 4.58%, only marginally below the benchmark SONIA rate of 4.89%, and closely aligned with peer group performance. No new external borrowing was undertaken in 2024-25, and our borrowing levels remain within prudent and sustainable boundaries. A reclassification of the CCLA Property Fund was undertaken in line with IFRS 9 requirements, which, although changing the accounting treatment, has no impact on the general fund due to the statutory override in place until 2029. The report provides details of the Council's investment activity, borrowing strategy, risk management and compliance with our Treasury management strategy. It demonstrates that the Council's financial decisions continue to be prudent, well-informed and risk-aware, with a strong emphasis on protecting public funds while maximising returns where appropriate. Finally, Chair, I'd like to thank our finance team for their continued professionalism and proactive management of the Council's Treasury function. Their work ensures that our financial resources are managed securely and efficiently in support of our wider strategic objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, points? Councillor Cheadle.
Yes, I just wondered if, given the government's current push to get the country investing in UK stocks, whether there's any pressure likely to come on councils to change their investment strategy?
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't heard that from our treasury management advisors. Generally, we wouldn't invest in stocks and shares. That's not part of our strategy. We are achieving a very good return from the investment strategy that we have, which is to invest in banks and building societies within the UK, but also to invest in money market funds as well. And we do have a small amount of investment with CCLA, that's £500,000. And the report does set out that there was a change in accounting treatment for that as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not suggesting we should do it. I'm suggesting that the Chancellor is beginning to put pressure on institutions to change their investment strategy.
Yeah, and pensions.
So, I mean, I think it's something we need to keep an ear out for, because, you know, the wind of change is about.
Councillor Oxborough.
No, I agree with Councillor Cheadle. We do need to watch out for that and resist it, because clearly the team know what they're doing. They're doing a very good job, and at the moment central government starts tinkering in Betty Boots, it's going to go west. So let's make sure that doesn't happen. But I mean, more broadly, I'm just wondering if there's a kind of a national league table of how we compare to other councils in terms of our performance.
There isn't a national league table as such, but we do belong to the Link Services Benchmarking Club. So that is compares us against sort of SIPFA nearest neighbours and some of the bigger councils within the southwest as well, some unitaries. So in terms of our performance, we were slightly under the benchmark. With regards to that. So, yeah, SIPFA nearest neighbours, we had an investment return of 4.58%. SIPFA nearest neighbours had an average rate of return of 4.73%. And I think in terms of why are we slightly below, we do have a policy of keeping our investments shorter term. So generally they are 3 months, 6 months, 9 month or 12-month investments. I think during the pandemic that set us in very good stead, because in terms of cash flow, unlike some other councils, we didn't have our cash tied up longer term. But if you do invest in some longer term deals, you can get some slightly higher interest rates. So councils that are big unitaries, they would put some investments out for more than a year. So that does bring their average up a little bit. Whereas district councils tend to keep investments shorter term.
It sounds to me like that's a very pragmatic approach, given that on the one hand we have a good flexibility in cash flow on the one hand, but we have a higher than expected level of income against our targets on the other. So I mean it's hitting both nails on the head really, so it's a well-designed programme. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 217, 5.4, if we go down to the 5th line in that report, there's the use of the term laddered investments. Can you tell me what that is, please, Mrs. Buckle?
Yes, thank you. So yeah, it is a sort of treasury management term. Basically what it means that you spread your investments over different intervals. So for example, rather than doing, say, an 8 million investment and putting that out for a year, what you could do is ladder what is called ladder those investments. So you to 1 million that matures in 1 month, another million matures in 2 months, another million that matures in 3 months, and you keep it going at intervals. There are advantages to what's called laddering investments. So if interest rates sort of are on your side, that can mean that you can get a higher interest rate from laddering them in that respect. It's not something we tend to do a huge amount, but we do tend to do that so that we time our investments to come back at the point that the precepts are due. So if we have a big payment that we know is going out, we will time our investment to mature that day. So in that respect, we do sort of use that laddering method. But yes, that's essentially what it is. It means staggering the investments, and that can pay off to do that.
Reid?
Yes, thank you, Chair. On page 220 of the document, the list of loans which we have, the top one is at a rate of 4.55, while the rest are a lot lower. Is there any logic in why that particular loan isn't paid off against our interest income, whilst the rest of those debts are so much lower than our net gain from our investments, that it's a lot of people, it would make sense to pay off that debt, which is at a level similar to our level of income. What's the policy on that, please?
Thank you. So yes, in terms of the debts which are shown, the one which is for 45 years, it's a different loan structure to the others. So it's actually what's called a maturity loan. So we don't pay off the 2.1 million until the end of the 45-year period, although we still put aside about 45,000 a year to pay the debt off. Although debts aren't secured against property, because that's not the way local government finances work, that particular borrowing was taken out around 2003, 2004, and it was to build the extension here at Kilwivie Park. So it was to build the council chamber, the lettable units that we have on the property, and the rental income that we are getting from those tenancies do pay off that borrowing. We always look to see, are there any opportunities to pay that off, because obviously it does have a higher interest rate, although in 2003, 2004, that was quite a competitive interest rate at the time. So we have been paying that debt down, but you won't see that 2.1 million coming down because it's a maturity loan, whereas all of the other loans are what's called an annuity loan, and we pay those off annually, so it's a different debt structure. But if there were any opportunities to pay that loan off in one go, we would bring that back to members and recommend that. It is something that we keep an eye on. We've got the money budgeted in our base budget to pay for that loan. Like I say, the rental income from tenants here in Kilwivie Park do pay that borrowing back. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments, queries? Could I just ask to enlighten me on page 222? It talks about 7.5, the council's core cash resources. Could you say a few words about what that actually, what core in that context means? The council's core cash resources have gone up by about $1.5 million.
Yes, so mainly it is things like earmark reserves or the general fund balance, but we also do have a small amount of capital funding as well. So, for example, if we were to receive a cash grant and it was for a capital project, but we don't spend it, so we have the money in before the year end, but we don't spend it till the next financial year, that would sit in your core cash resources under capital. So that's what can be sort of other. There are reasons why that's gone up. Mainly that's because earmark reserves have increased, which we were talking about. That's where we've put money aside for future purchases of vehicles, or we've put money aside for the council plan. But yes, mainly core cash resources are things like your earmark reserves and general fund balances.
Yes, I'm probably confusing it with core financial, core purchasing power, or whatever it's called.
Oh, yes. Yes, it's different to core spending power.
Core spending power. It's core spending power.
Which is more a technical term about how much funding we actually receive from government. Yes.
Further points, questions? I have only one more if nobody has that. I just wanted on page 227, it talks about capital expenditure and financing. And it's capital expenditure of whatever, financed by external sources, own resources, and on-finance capital expenditure. I just wonder what own resources means and what on-finance capital expenditure means.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So own resources would be whereby the council would use its own earmarked reserves to fund capital expenditure. The unfinanced capital expenditure is where we would be using borrowing to finance capital expenditure. So the 175 relates to 20 Plymouth Road, and that is where members agreed that part of the funding for that scheme would be through internal borrowing. So that's what the 175 relates to. It's just borrowing from the council's own cash resources.
Thank you very much. Further, any other questions or comments? No. I think we're asked to note it or approve this. I think are we all content with that? Well, thank you very much. And the next bit is something which gives me an item which gives me a lot of pleasure, which is the item 11, which is the appointment of an independent person to this committee. I'll get to say a few words and then ask for comments. The council approved that we should have an independent person to add on in a non-voting capacity to this committee. So the idea is that this is sit for good practice as well, and it's also something which is taken up by most of the councils in Devon, most of the councils in the country, as it happened. We tried to do this a year or two ago and were unsuccessful, but I'm really, really pleased to say that we interviewed on, whenever it was, the two of us interviewed two very good candidates, and we were satisfied that both could actually fulfil the role. But we were very pleased that the preferred candidate is Mr. Rob Hutchins, who is an accountant, and he used to be, in the olden days, the head of Devon Audit Partnership back in the day, but it isn't anything to do with it now. So we just want to seek the approval or the recommendation of this committee that we put them forward to the council this afternoon to approve. So I just wonder if anybody's got any questions, and hopefully we'll approve. Councillor Sellers.
No question, Chairman. Independent members are very useful. So I'm happy to propose or whatever you want me to do.
Councillor Cheadle.
Two quick questions. One is, will Mr. Hutchins, is it? Yeah. Be appointed also to the South Hams Audit Committee, or is it just West Devon? And secondly, are there terms of reference for the role he's taking up?
It is just West Devon, absolutely just West Devon. South Hams has its own independent member, although there are members who have multiple councils. We chose the one who was best for us, and yes, there are terms of reference which went to through this committee. It might have been last year, year before, and through to the council because it's changed in the constitution, and the constitutional change was approved by the council. Are there any other comments? Could I just ask for the approval of the committee for this appointment? Thank you very much. And I think we have finished session 1.
Chairman, I have checked and Mr. Fairbairn is available, but not... Mr. Fairbairn is available. I was just going to say, if members wanted to take the item 13, review of standards complaints process, that would mean that we would then have a shorter session this afternoon, because we do have full council starting at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
I think this is personal timing. I mean, this is segues. Let's carry on with that item, hopefully. Could I ask you to introduce it, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The other thing they say about good timing is it's a good joke. But this is not one of those. This is This is a report into a review of the council's complaints procedures regarding complaints made against councillors for alleged breaches of the Code of Conduct. The council has to have arrangements in place for dealing with complaints against both borough and parish councillors. The council has had a two-stage process in place for a number of years now. I think we reviewed it a couple of years ago and involved members in having a greater role in the determination of the complaints. I hope members, I think probably most members of the committee have had some involvement at some stage in at least one of the complaints. So they've got some, so you have some understanding of the sort of complaints that we get. What is one of the issues that has arisen, however, is because of potential allegations of predetermination, members who have taken part in the first stage of the process, the informal assessment, are then barred from taking part in the hearings, stage 2 of the process. So that has led to delays and issues around getting quorums for or getting a quorum for the standards committee's hearings. The other issue is that in many cases a hearing has had to be held because even though the investigating officer has carried out an investigation and prepared a report, the report has concluded that there's been no breach. And in those circumstances, it appears to be unfair on complainants and on subject members that there are then delays in them finding out that the decision will be confirmed that there was no breach. So in Appendix A of your report, you have the council complaints process with a number of amendments made to them. And they're aimed at improving the speed and efficiency. They still involve some member involvement at both stages. Principally, stage 1 will involve consultation with the chairman or vice chairman, as the case may be. And if there is a finding of a suggestion that the complaint doesn't give rise to a breach, or wouldn't give rise to a breach if investigated, then the decision is delegated to me as monitoring officer at that stage in consultation with the chairman and the independent person. If not, then the matter proceeds to investigation. And again, if the investigation comes back with a finding of no breach, there is a further conversation between myself and the chairman and the independent person as to whether the matter should then proceed. Chairman, the amendments are set out. They, I know, have been discussed by my deputy, Catherine Bowen, and yourself, and indeed the chairman of the Audit and Governance Committee at South Hams. I'm hoping that everything is all agreed. We would like a single process for both councils, if at all possible. Does make life simpler and easier to run. But otherwise, Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions and points? Councillor Cheadle.
Just one. Reading through the Appendix A, the sort of proposed councillor complaint process paper, I don't think it actually specifies what the composition of the subcommittee is. I mean, it's implied that it's 3 councillors, but it doesn't actually say that.
That is set out in Chapter 2 of the Constitution, where the size and composition of committees and subcommittees is determined, so it is there.
I'd have thought it would have been in the
perhaps it would be better just to make
itself.
a reference to the Constitution. And then we wouldn't have that question, would we? Any comments, further comments? Councillor Oxborough.
Yeah, and I think back to some of those where I've been involved in the sort of early stages of these complaints. There's this frustrating sense that some of them are just simply spats. There's nothing substantial behind them. And I'm wondering to what extent the monitoring officer can be given greater discretion in terms of weeding those out, because the amount of time that's taken and the amount of cost involved is substantial. And we did discuss this on a previous occasion. There's one particular council where it's been just one after another. They're queuing up. It's like buses coming to a bus stop all together. It's ridiculous, and it's onerous and it's unnecessary. And I believe the monitoring officer has got a good enough brain to be able to work that one out and say, no, go away. I was just wondering if you have that discretion, because you should have it.
Chairman, I think I probably will have enough sufficient discretion to wheel those out. So I hopefully in the future we won't get so many complaints where it appears to be tit for tat, and it is one of the criteria for dismissing them.
Councillor Sellers.
Thank you. Will we be notifying the parish councils about these changes and hopefully following on from what Councillor Oxborough was saying, time wasting will be prevented? So people will think twice. And is there any way that if there are habitual time wasters, I suggest, in inverted commas, that we have some recourse that we can actually say something to them or do something? It's a complete waste of time at times.
It is a bit difficult in the sense of there might just be that one complaint that actually is meritorious, and so one does have to be careful about applying anything in a blanket approach. And equally, I suppose, complainants don't always see it in the same way that as you've just described, because it's important to them. So I do have to be a little circumspect, I think, how I deal with those complaints. But I think there is enough scope for me to be able to wheel them out if it really does look like this is simply a wasting time.
I think Councillor Sellers had another question as well about how the parish town councils would be informed of this.
I think it's a good question. I wouldn't have a problem with, once we had agreed the process and South Hams had also agreed the process, I wouldn't have a problem with sending a copy of this paper to all the parish clerks so that they are then well aware of what the process is.
Okay, any further? I've got an additional question. If this committee receives an annual report on this sort of stuff, so presumably we will continue to receive that sort of annual report, which will outline, if you like, the monitoring officers saying we don't want to carry this on, or however you will say that.
Yes, Chairman, it's good practice, and I think it's something we've done in every year that I've been monitoring officer here. It does identify trends and issues, and I think ultimately it's the way in which this review came about. So happy to do so.
Other comments? Are we happy to propose this? Thank you very much. That's great. We've got 15 minutes. I'm just wondering if we just do the last item, which is the work plan. Thank you very much. And there's the work plan, which is on page 251, sets out what we as a committee propose to do in the next 3 meetings, I believe. So what I would comment about this is that we've already raised a couple of issues, one arising from the self-assessment about doing a development plan, and secondly, as part of that, an additional meeting of some sort with at least the 4 members who did not attend that, and hopefully everybody can press on and do that. But subject to that, anybody got any comments or about the development, about the work plan. Are we happy with the work plan? Well, thank you very much. I think I declare this bit of the meeting closed and see you at 1 o'clock for the presentation on pensions.
Thank you, Chairman.